In reflection, I am feeling a little bit vulnerable. It's not an easy thing to talk about, but I think what's overweighing me feeling emotional about this is the drive to share know how important it is. And I know that if I was hearing someone like myself open up and talk about it, that it would be significant for me to hear. I definitely didn't come into this thinking that I would be talking about this. I think it'd be part of me moving forward is maybe doing more of this, breaking molds and being a role model to people and being human and opening up about vulnerabilities.
Hollie Andrew, thank you so much for joining Jo and I today.
My pleasure, guys.
What is a significant event or challenge that you've had in your life that's left quite an impact for you?
I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about today. The answer is going to be when I decided to break out and become an entrepreneur. And I don't take that word lightly, but I think that kind of encapsulates a lot of what I've done and what I'm doing. Rather than picking something specifically, I feel like there was a moment where I decided to be bigger than my own personal journey and to do something of service. And then that became one thing, which became another, which became another. So I wanted to take some control back into my own life rather than being an actor and a performer who was so reliant on projects and phone calls from agents saying they love you, pivoting into a space where I became the person making those calls and creating the stories and providing opportunities.
So take us back to that moment, Hollie. When was it led to that moment, and when did you know that entrepreneurship was the way you wanted to go?
It coincided with moving up to the Gold Coast. So a bit of a sea change. I'd been professional at that time in the industry for about 20 years. And I've had a wonderful career, and I'm very blessed to have had the experiences that I have had. The moving up here, I saw it as a new start. And I had done a little bit of directing and teaching in Melbourne before, and I'd really resonated with it and liked it. I'd always been the people on stage or in front of the camera. I had written a little bit and done a little bit of film directing, but came up here and started to direct more and to work in a space where I was taking more control. And then next minute, studio's opportunity fell into my hands and I moved on that. And then there was an agency and I moved on that, and then that wasn't quite right. And then moved into a space where I started to work with artists with disability. And then that became a big faction of my studio. And then that's really become something that I'm really proud of. And that then became a not-for-profit and a charity that was launched last year called Abundabiliteez Productions. So that coincides with the studio on ones. All those steps happened in hindsight in a really natural, organic way. But at the time, there's a lot of faith that happens, and there's a lot of trust, and there's a lot of jumping into the deep end and crying and laughing.
But what was it inside of you that allowed you to do that? Number one, to have the courage. And number two, how was it feeling with you when you did take those steps?
The intuition was always there. I have these little flashes of moments where I can see myself doing things, and I would find talking and having conversations within the pathways of achieving that, you just get a feeling. And for me, I'm a big believer in intuition and feeling that something's right or wrong sometimes as well. But going into a space, especially with my artists with disability, where the specific things that we're doing and the way we're doing them hasn't really been done, definitely not on the Gold Coast before, not in the same way in Queensland. And so when you're launching something for the first time that really there's no model for it, there's no mentor exactly in that pocket you can ring up and ask, it's really problematic and scary, because you have a lot of people going, that won't work. And then you have other people going, that's brilliant. I don't know how you're going to get there, but when you do, that's going to change the world. So it's the change the world comments that you hold on to, and the others you've just got to put down to, that's great. Thank you so much for your opinion. I'm going to take that in, and then I'm going to spit it out the other side whilst I keep achieving my dream. So, but even now to this day, I still am in a position where I thought I would be further down the line than I am. So I'm about a 6-month time frame out of where I thought I would be. And it's a battle. There's a lot of pressures I've put on myself. And when you're putting everything on the line and you're in a bit of a cycle with it, you know, noodles and not getting pretty nails done. All those sorts of things went out the window a long time ago, and just battling forward to get the goals and to achieve is the real focus at the moment. And along the way, don't get me wrong, there's incredible things that then make you and remind yourself of what you're doing is the right thing. But the hurdles are real, and they're the things that make you question yourself and bring up the fear more than anything else.
That leap into being an entrepreneur, for many people, the fear would stop them. So when you took that leap, was it a leap of faith? Was it your intuition that said, no, there's something bigger that's calling me? Did some of these fears that you're living now come up for you when you were drawn to that shift towards an entrepreneur?
I think when you start, adrenaline covers a lot. I think you get a bit blessed by going, yeah, woo! And then reality hits and you get your first couple of hurdles come up and you get a bit more of a reality check on it. So I think to start, well, for me personally, to start, it's always a little bit easier, you're a bit more gung-ho and then, as I said, yeah, the reality hits, and I'm a big believer in all problems have a solution. And I would only go to a working relationship or a future, you know, collaborator with the problem and a potential solution. I think that's a big part of getting around the fear of things. I also have things like, if I picture my worst situation and I can be okay with that, then that takes an element of fear and anxiety away as well. That's a technique I use quite a lot. So picture the worst case, play in that space and get used to it. And then if that's the worst that happens, you're going to be fine. And then more often than not, it doesn't ever happen. But if you're prepared for that, that helps with some fear. But for me, especially when I pushed into the space of mentoring young artists and working with artists with disability, I can just see the differences that I'm making and the real life effects that really matter, that I'm already getting successes in. And I think that validation compensates some of the fears when you're needing to still pay rent and find ways to make more revenue and to bring money in for projects. And so those unknowns can get balanced with the knowns that you are doing well and you're seeing those results.
It sounds to me a lot like your vision, Hollie, and that sense of having a purpose larger than yourself is really the thing that keeps you on track regardless of those moments where it's unclear.
Absolutely. And I think that feeds back into when I was an actor as well. I was always drawn to roles that had substance, that did something really interesting, that took my personal journey somewhere, made a statement, had something to say. I've always done deep dives with things that I've done and things that I've chosen in my career. So stepping then into this space, there's that same element within my personality and within myself that craves that purpose and that service. And that does help drive you in the darker, more fearful moments.
In those really dark, fearful moments, tell me a little bit more about how that actually feels internally to you and what does your head do?
Yeah, I think a lot of my fear, if I'm being transparent, does come down to financial pressure.
Yeah.
I think that when that becomes questionable, the financial thing has always been the most scary aspect to what I'm doing. I don't have the privilege or safety, like I haven't actually paid myself a wage for about a year now. So it's just making things happen and meet and, you know, and the plates spinning in the air, knowing that the result is so close and it's almost there. And once the charity gets its final tick from the government, which is what we were waiting for, I can go to all the big investors that I've spent time curating and we'll be able to start to work together. But that hiatus for 6 months is a long time. So the darker, most fearful times are definitely a derivative of finances. And it's amazing how quickly you can have the best ideas, best intentions, be producing such incredible work, changing people's lives. But when it comes down to that time again where you're having to pay bills, it's just not there or it's tricky. Or once again, it's amazing how you may be so elevated and all of a sudden it's like the carpet's ripped from underneath you and you are back down, flat faced on the cement, going, and trying to find the motivation to get up again and to keep going. So that's my greatest fear. And in those dark times, I definitely contemplate, maybe drama teaching wasn't such a bad idea, which was always something on the cards for me as an option in my life to maybe go and do, because I'd be entering in the way I am now, though I wouldn't have the same freedom that I have. But that's a job that pays every week and you get great holidays. And so that was always this little voice on my shoulder that would be like, remember, there's always, so it was never not options. Staying true to the path that I really, really want was the trickier, harder one, ultimately more fulfilling one that I decided to take, and still choose to take that every day.
Hollie, for many people, I get the feeling that financial fears comes these layers of fears. Is it fear of success? Is it fear of not being good enough? Is there anything that you feel is sitting underneath that financial fear that's niggling away as part of that?
Yeah. I actually think success, I have been able to separate the two. One of the questions that I was thinking about in discussing and having a chat with you guys today was the concept of success. And we might be getting to it later. I don't mean to jump the gun, but something that this life experience has taught me is absolutely a more real and authentic definition of success for me. And I don't associate that with financial gain. I think I definitely used to, especially in the industry that I've been in for many years, where the celebrity, big house, big life is definitely attached to success, power as well, especially in the arts, because, you get to make choices to make films and to get budgets for things. That's definitely changed for me. I actually think I'm successful right now. I'm more successful I've ever been. I'm just going to keep writing the success. So I actually do believe that in myself. And that's something that I probably console myself with in the moments where I'm feeling that the pieces of the puzzle aren't quite in place yet. And the second part of that question would be, I'm thinking more deeply about it now. Maybe it's a fear of letting the people down I'm working with, because again, it's such a fluid space that I'm creating, and there's no security for me in it right now other than the promise and the commitment of what we're currently doing. And anything project based from an entrepreneurial space, it's not like I can sign off a contract for next year and pay you this amount. The guarantees are loose. That then it's high risk, high reward. There is an element of potentially letting the people down, that I've gone, this is going to happen, this is great. Not being able to arrive at that in the way that I've suggested is a fear, but I'm pretty persistent. So once I set my mind to something, there's every chance I'll get it done, whatever the sacrifice is. Although I think pivoting is really important as well. Like knowing when you've done everything you can, and to truly in your heart know that letting go is the best option, because where that door shuts, the other one will open. That's a tricky place to be. And I've done that a couple of times as well. But there's a difference between that and giving up.
How do you know that, Hollie? Those moments that you've gone, okay, do I let it go or do I pivot?
Oh, that's a really good question. I know the reason it's a good question is because I've kind of found myself being on that line in the last 6 months. Is this a moment where I'm actually being naive and I should be pivoting out of this? And what has kept me going is knowing that I am doing everything in my possible capacity, but there's still options on the table. If there were no options on the table, then I'd be going, well, I'm giving it everything and I'm looking in front of me and I can't see any tangible things right now. So maybe it's just in the wrong place that I'm looking. It's just the patience and await games. That's what I've mentioned to myself, and my beautiful family, my partner, who have been, they are such believers. They're an admiration of what I do, but they also see the struggles. The struggles are real, and the sacrifices. If the hope and the actual optimistic opportunities weren't there, then different story. But for now they are, and that's how I can tell the difference.
Really interesting you bring that point of patience up, because it was funny, Jo and I were just recording a podcast with someone else the other day and they raised the exact same things, and they used the analogy of Steve Jobs when he was invited back to Apple. And one of the things that he was pushed for was, what's a new idea? How are you going to make this work? And his whole point was, no, we'll just wait. the right opportunity will come. And that goes against the grain of fear. Fear makes us act. Either we run away from something, we try and fight it, or we completely freeze and we do zero, in not the sense of waiting, but don't know what to do with it. What you're saying is a whole nother layer, is it's having the knowledge to wait because it just hasn't become apparent now is a huge thing.
I think that's what's called faith, that word has different connotations. And for me, it's a kind of universal faith. It's, you need to know and believe that when the time is right, it will happen. And it's such a textbook thing to say, but it's true. And it's so hard when you're right in the trenches and someone's like, just when the time is right. Thank you. Get it? But it's true. I think that's why the saying has resonated for so long, is because it's correct. And I call it my memoir chapter. This is the really interesting chapter in my memoir when I write them, when I'm at like Sadie, because I feel that this is the bit where you're down to your last coins over and over again, and you've got all the stories of the hardships, so that when the successes all match up in the way that I envision they're going to, and I turn around and go, wow, but that time taught me this, and it taught me this. It taught me patience. It taught me how to look up government documents to fight questions and answers that I don't know, to reach out and be prepared to hear 15 no's before you hear a yes. And that helps compensate the fear. If I was just sitting here rocking myself back and forward, that would be different. I need to turn the fear into momentum or into a doing. I need to mix it up, because that moment of the fear, if it grabs a hold of you and it controls you rather than you controlling it, it's a mentally dangerous place to be. It's a spiritually dangerous place to be. And as far as being in a world where you're trying to make a difference and make changes, if you let that take over, then I look at doing something different, because there's a lot of fear involved with doing something for the first time.
I absolutely love that concept, Hollie. I just want to go over it again. This idea that you use the concept that this is your chapter where you really want to go back and go, wow, look at the struggle. You're zooming out rather than zooming in. And as you're saying, letting fear overtake you and getting caught up in it. Yep, I'm going through all of this, but I can't wait to read the next chapter. I can't wait to write the next bit that goes, look at everything I've just learned. I really love that idea.
Actually, I've used that analogy for myself a few times, and because I do love writing as well, and I've always thought my life would make a really great memoir at some point. So I've had that in my mind anyway, and it has got me through a few really rough times where it's been a little affirmation I've given myself. I mean, I've got great chapters all around, but the ones where you're struggling, where you really get your audiences resonating, because I think people can appreciate that. It's another reason why I really am drawn to films that are based on true stories. I love a biography, and I love a hero's journey or a hero's quest, because it gives you inspiration to know that those people that you see at their end game when they're writing their book, they weren't always in that position. That gives people like myself, in the moments like I'm having right now, a little bit of a feel that, it's going to be fine. It's a little bit of security. It's a little bit of that faith we talk about, reassurance, all of the good things. It reminds you that just keep going, because if they can do it, why can't I?
Can't help but think while you're talking, Hollie, it's really important to be out there with your journey right now when it is not necessarily easy, because that also encourages other people, I think, to hang in there when they might want to just ditch it all, and yet they may very well be on the cusp of something new. There's still something in you that says, I just know deep, deep, deep down that this is worth hanging in there for.
Yeah. And look, I can't wait to have another interview with you guys in a year or 2 years' time, and we'll go, remember when you're feeling that way? I'll be like, oh my God, that was like rock bottom. And we'll laugh about it. And then there'll probably be another time in 3 years' time where I'll be like, oh, it's different, but I'm back at feeling scared again. And it is interesting as well on that end, because I do struggle, as I think a lot of people do, is to struggle to open up in the times where you're feeling you're most vulnerable.
Yep.
And I think that's just part of what we do in human nature as men, as women, as all genders. I feel if all of us could open up in those times, then it would really make a difference in changing the world, because people would start to be with each other in those times. More people would start to open up about themselves, and all of a sudden that expectation of what we're having to do and be seen as doing, and that would just all start to just deteriorate a little bit, because it would be more about how you're feeling and the achievements and successes through that. I think social media's obviously got a lot to blame for that, because it's such a premise that is just, for the most part, it's false. And that's really fractured a lot of society. The funny thing is, when you're feeling at your most vulnerable, you end up caving off in a room and scrolling through on your phone. It's the worst thing you can do. So it just feeds you feeling more crap about yourself, and you're seeing people on boats or like living their best life, which are they? Who knows? Who cares? That feeds then into your fear that you're not. And what am I doing right now? If I took a selfie in my pajamas, it's midday, to try and convince myself to get going and to keep the momentum going. So I would love more people to talk about this space, as you said, when you're in it, not just when we're on our super yacht looking back in reflection, but when you're actually in the trenches.
Holly, that's exactly why we're doing this podcast. It's a topic that we talk about often post once we've moved through a fear, or often we don't talk about it in the sense of how we've navigated from a point of view of what it's taught us. And these are incredibly important discussions. One of the things you said earlier that I really want to come back to and unpack with you is that you talked about the fact that the thing that is fearful for you right now is the whole financial piece. Yet in the same breath, or the breath before that, you talked about how you have defined success for you, and that even though that's a fear, you're sitting in a space of success. So I'd really love you to delve into that for us, because I think that's a really important intersection.
Yeah, I mean, when you say it like that, it sounds a little bit like a contradiction. And in a way...
No, not at all.
No, but in a way, it kind of beautifully is. When I break it down, the financial edge at the moment is having to have thrown any collateral that personally I have in my life towards my project or my service, my idea that's going to create so much. But personally, the stakes are now very, very high. And that's where the financial situation comes in. If I was sitting here pretty coasty, not having to worry about that, I question whether this waiting process to get this from this person and to get the charity, all of that might not have as deep a resonance with me, because I'd be like, well, that's cool, it's going to happen, we'll have one. But I'm like, it would be great for it to happen now. As I'm kind of stretched to the last, and even going to Adelaide Fringe their last week, and it was a success in all terms of the Fringe, but my expectations, as with most things in life, are pretty high. I thought that by the time we'd even have arrived there, I would have had this next step of the charity kicked in, and this would have happened and this would have happened. But I'd made a promise to a beautiful actor who has autism, who's done his first professional show. I've made a promise to the theatre. I've made a promise to the production company. So all of these things were reliant on the commitment that I had said to them to make this happen. So there's not any world where it's not happening. But what I was using to make that happen hadn't arrived. So I had to find other ways to make that happen. And that, for me, then is where you personally put yourself on the line. And that's like the last line, because once that's gone, that's when you have to stop and go, okay, maybe that's a sign to pivot, to go somewhere else, or to look at a different idea. But I got there and we did it, and it was great. And now we're on to the next thing. And so that, again, I reflection, I didn't know how I was going to, but I made it happen. So again, is that just a lesson in the step of all of this, to go, these things that you find the hardest are the moments where you're going to work it out in the best way. And so then that becomes the groundwork for the future successes. The optimistic way to look at it. The answer to that question before, I kind of dissecting that a little bit more. For me, it's the literal lose the house if things don't go well, or when you're at that point with what you have on the line, that's when it's like literal financial pressure. And that's when the fear of what you're doing starts to take a bit of a hold. These stories all the time about people mortgaging houses or putting their own personal stake into something that they believe in. And stories of when they work out are fantastic, but there's a lot of stories where it doesn't work out and they lose things and have to start again and rebuild. Is it worth taking the risk to begin with? I would say absolutely it is, because without risk, there would never be any reward. That's just my personal philosophy. So, and each to their own with regards to that. I guess that's why I've landed myself in the idea of being an entrepreneur, because I love pushing and seeing and having a strong purpose. That's how we evolve and work it out. But
So let's talk about the success that sits beside that in your definition.
Yeah.
So while you're navigating this incredibly difficult period of not knowing, really not knowing when this is going to shift for you in terms of financially being able to fund these projects, talk to us about the success side and what you're feeling around that and how you've defined that.
It was leaving the industry, being a professional actor and artist and performer. And while I had seen successes, there were people that had had similar successes and had gone to America and had 10 times the wage. First, I think comparison is such in my industry, it's such a potent thing to do. And it's a bit of a trigger for me personally. So I try not to compare myself to anybody. Everyone else is taken, so be you. That's a big thing I say when I mentor young artists. Because when you take that ownership back, it doesn't matter what anyone else is doing because they're not you. And there's only one of you. So relish in that. The successes on paper, I knew that I'd done well. And for me, as long as I'm doing my best with everything I'm doing in each and every day, that's a success. And that for me personally, it's important to have a really strong purpose. And if I'm doing my best in each day, the best that I can do that day, and that day might be, I need a mental checkout today. Like I need to just take myself away and just binge adolescence for 10 hours and be inspired again and turn everything off and rejig my brain into a place that's safe and healthy. I've worked out ways to balance the extremities of what I do. Even that day would be a success because I've listened to myself. I've listened to my body. I'm not pushing it in a dangerous way, and I've acknowledged what I need in that day, and that's actually doing my best that day. That's a success. There are a lot of people out there that don't listen to what they really need in their heart or their mind, and I might look at their life from the outside and it looks really successful, but they might be really unhappy. For me, what I've worked out is my success at truly listening to myself and knowing what I need in each day, doing the best in those moments as well. If I'm not, then look at why and try to do better. And keeping a really strong purpose. If I've got something I'm aiming towards, it makes it so much easier to push forward. And I talk about that a lot in mentoring. Again, these young artists coming through and 15, 16, 17, 18, 19-year-olds. I'm like, cool, what do you see yourself in a year? What do you want to be doing? They're like, I don't know. I'm like, okay. I don't necessarily even go to 5 years because we can't get to one. But there's a real lack of dreaming, manifesting. If you don't have any idea of where you want to go, then how can you get up each day and do life? Like, what are you aiming towards? It can be anything. It can be being a baker. It could be I want to travel. But without having that thing, I truly believe that takes away, or it means the fear can creep up. And then all of a sudden that you've got one negative thing that can happen, be it a financial thing, be it a life thing, something really tragic might happen. And all of a sudden there's a fear involved around just how do I get through the day? And if you have a purpose going, well, I know this is really hard, but I'm aiming towards that direction, can really help with fear. What's helped me anyway.
There's something I'm really curious with, Hollie, because this comes up a lot, this idea of purpose. Often people say, I don't know what my purpose is. So talk us through, have you always had this one golden backlit purpose, or for you, has it changed and evolved, and how did you find it?
I always wanted to be Whitney Houston, so that's my purpose has slightly changed there. No, I've always loved storytelling. So at the heart of it, a lot of the choices I've made have been a derivative of that, whether it's entertaining, singing, acting, writing, and now the space that I'm in where I'm still doing those things, by the way, but being an entrepreneur and creating spaces and platform for artists with disability to come through and to tell their stories and to nurture their ideas, and young people as well to do the same. I feel like it's not exactly what I set out to do, but it's a derivative of. Yeah, it's definitely snaked through a few different options, and it should. It can. For me, it was a great thing to do because I loved learning different things, meeting different people, which all comes back to storytelling. So if we're kind of deep diving, the super objective of my life was to be a storyteller. And then all these things have branched off of it. That's a big zoom out. So if we zoom back in, then it's more looking at the opportunities in front of me at the time. There was a time where I wanted to go to LA and have a crack over there. And so that became my purpose, to get there, which wasn't an easy feat. And then living there and existing there and giving that a crack. So, but that's all feeds back into my overall purpose as well. Your purpose can change. You can achieve. I remember when I was younger, I had a very strong purpose / affirmation manifestation where I said I wanted to professionally work on film and TV and on stage and in music theatre. I wanted to professionally work in all of them, thinking this was like this massive task that I'd spend my entire life achieving. And then at 26, I bopped out and I'd done it all. And I remember that moment of going, oh my God, I've done it. And it was so important for me in that moment to find a new purpose, because in my kind of mind, I'd achieved what I'd set out to achieve. People do this all the time and then flounder for a while and kind of become a little bit complacent, because understanding that, great, now go again. Now what else? Now reinvent. Now find something new. That's problematic for people. And I've seen it in my life where I'm like, great, what's next? Go again. And with young people as well, I think a lot of them say, I don't know what my purpose is. And I'm like, great. And you don't have to, but what do you like doing? What makes you smile? What makes you excited? Start there. And then what a gift we have in life to be able to make choices where if you can align the things that make you feel those ways with getting paid for it, isn't that the dream? Isn't that success?
I just love this. You've talked about a couple of different purposes, that this big picture purpose that has been woven throughout your life. And then you had smaller zoomed in purpose that was helping you lead towards that. But when you got there and you said, I've actually achieved all of these things, often we get caught up in what's my purpose going to bring me? And I love then that you said, say to young people, find what you love doing and do that. So really, is your purpose about how you feel at the end of the day? It's not a checklist. It's not going, I want to be in all of these different places and then I'll feel happy. It's about what brings me those moments of, is it joy? Is it peace? Is it contentment? That's my purpose rather than a checklist.
I'm reflecting back to that first when I shared about achieving those aspects of performing arts that I'd set out to do. I was much younger then, and I came from a place where I didn't have a lot of opportunities. To start, it would have been a driving force. Like, I'm going to do this because that's going to make me successful and excellent and brilliant, and would have been tied into all of that. But at the heart of it, it was also the experiences and knowing I had something in me that I wanted to share as well, knowing I could do it and wanting the opportunity to explore that, to show that and to share that. That's definitely a joy. I don't want to say ego. I think ego is so overused, and I don't consider myself someone that has a big ego. But I guess if you're looking at it in the way of validation or having an opportunity to share something that you think you do really well, that's valid. All those things were me giving myself opportunities to shine and to share. I guess that's joy. And then moving on from there, now it's very much about joy. I'll be saying things as a mentor sometimes, or as a director as well, or as a writer, and things will come out of me and I stop and go, that's so clever, and I have no idea where that came from. But without putting myself into situations of being an entrepreneur and then bringing that back to other people, I wouldn't be bringing this up in myself and finding this and finding this voice and this intelligence that I have inside of me, because that's part of the collaboration and that's part of what they're bringing out in me, which is so incredible. And my artists with disability, I can't tell you how much they've changed my life and have made me see and feel and work towards things that I didn't anticipate. And a lot of people's first comments, this is such an amazing thing. You give so much to the end, which I do, but they give so much back to me. And that's why it's such a magical space to work in. And that's why I believe that what we're doing is so important, and it's going to be so successful. Already successful. It's going to be so well known on a bigger platform.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And therein lies that whole piece, isn't it? The joy that you get from seeing what the people that you support are achieving, and that creates the passion, that creates the purpose.
Yep. Yeah, I think so. And in the moments of fear, when I'm fetal position, hugging my doggy, they're the moments that I try to reflect on as well. And definitely the moments that my partner comes in and flashes before me and reminds me of. They're the beacons that you remind yourself of in the darker times. They're the things that when you are being fearful of choices that you're needing to make and things that you're doing, that you remind yourself why you're doing it. And that's so important and so joyous, and that navigates the space of the darkness of the fear.
Mm. I find all of that incredibly enlightening and also inspirational, Hollie, because so many of us sit back here and it's in the what we achieve, the where we go to, that we focus our attention. And this conversation in this last few minutes is focused on what our heart gives us to present to the world, is absolutely the core of where our success is and where we can navigate fear. So thank you for sharing those last few moments, because it's super important for many of us to listen, me included, to hear again.
Well, thank you for saying that. The why matters.
Mm.
And that's absolutely what has taken over my life. And it also has helped answer the thing of success as well. And it's also helped answer being able to have the faith and not knowing and being patient, because if you're living the why in the best way possible, and your why is of service, your why brings you joy. So if the actual doing is what ticking all those boxes and making you feel all those things, then does the what really matter?
Mm.
Or is that the what you can let go of? Because it's all going to happen anyway. We don't know the exactness of it, but the less you worry about that and the more time you spend in the why, that's also the present. That's bringing it back to be where your feet are. I say that a lot. That's a really important one, is to try to be where your feet are. Because as much as, and I say this as an entrepreneur, so we do project big, but just don't get lost in the vastness of that. Enjoy the gifts of the now. That's something that I try to do as well, just to bring it back to navigating the space of fear, because I really do enjoy talking about this. Anxiety has been quite a real thing for me, if I'm able to share that.
Mm.
Funnily enough, it only started like maybe 10 years ago, really. It's a real thing that I battle with quite a lot. Fear is very much attached to anxiety. And for me, it manifests in a way of definitely my anxiety. And I talking about it and hearing other people's, or me sharing how I combat it or how I work on it, I could be a really valuable thing. Definitely when I've shared it with other people, because people sort of look at me and I'm like, what? Yeah, I'm like, yeah, I do. You're just such a very good actor. Yeah, no, but no, I do open up about this a lot, and it's a really real thing that attacks a lot of art, or just society. Let's be honest, but especially people that are risking a lot. I think that the being up on that tightrope and looking down, and even if you have a net, which at this point I feel like I don't, but the net's so far down, that's where faith, trusts, or all these things come into it. And for me, being able to do small things that are in your control is taking the control back from the fear. So, finding yourself in a moment where I'm waiting for a decision, or something's come up where it's like, oh, what am I going to do? How am I going to make this? Whatever those things are, for me to be able to go, you know what? I've thought about this long and hard already. I'm just going to take a couple of hours off. I'm going to go and see a movie, and I'm going to sit there and I'm going to not think about, I'm trying to not think about anything and just be taken into a different space, reminded of what I do. It's a great story. And then I take that control back, and then you hit life again afterwards. The movie analogy could be whatever it is for whomever it is, but taking that control back, even for a couple of hours, really helps in then traversing back into the fear and feeling stronger and being able to take ownership of that in a different way.
You've hit on a really important point. It's the little moments, pulls you out of that flight, freeze or appease mode and into something that allows you to place your attention on other than the fear. And so it's a really important strategy. That's amazing.
And underestimated how little that thing can be. We know all the time about going for a walk with an animal or even out in nature or sitting by the beach, which are really beautiful and forms of meditation in some ways in some people's minds. But even just a nice thing like a little bit of a spoiling, like a movie, or a little bit of a yum cha at the local Chinese place, or something just for you that's a little gift, can just be a little tipping point. For me, it definitely stops my immediate spiral of anxiety. Having to get out and amongst people will do the same, but sometimes that's a little bit of a falsity to start. Then it kicks in, but I can battle that as well. I could also go, no, I'm not going and sit in the dark rooms. Giving myself something that I feel good about is a big thing.
Thank you for sharing that, Hollie, because often anxiety and fear can be very alone, busy in our minds experience for many of us. And you're sharing with us some ideas about giving yourself permission to step outside that busy mind. And by you doing those small gifts is a moment where you get to buy into some of those thoughts or that anxious chatter and do something to give yourself a break. And it sounds like that then you step back in. The fear's still there, but you've stepped outside that anxious mind, given yourself a break and come back in to be able to then face that fear with strength. Is that how you see it?
Absolutely. And I think that fear, anxiety, and shame, they're the trifecta. And that's how I feel anyway. And I feel so much shame involved when I'm feeling scared and vulnerable and anxious. I feel really embarrassed. And then that makes it hard. I was like, yeah, I'll just reach out, call someone. But you feel so embarrassed that you're feeling this way that it makes it really hard to do that, which is why I go by myself. Like I go to the movie by myself, and I try to choose a time where I'm literally in the cinema by myself, which is the most amazing experience ever anyway. But being able to do something where you don't have to face anyone at all, and then you take shame out of it. Then the fact that you're getting sidetracked by something stops the monkey mind or the anxious mind, which stops the anxiety a little bit. And then the fear is left by itself and doesn't really have as big a place to breathe. So then that dulls down a little bit as well. And then, and as you said, by the time you come out, you just see it a bit differently. And it's not the tipping point of spirals, because the spiral is the trick that for me gets me. If I'm on that, it can really take me down. So you got to stop the momentum.
Just on that piece with shame, we value that you really respect and appreciate that you are bringing this up, because for some people, shame does very much sit alongside those other emotions. So how do you sit alongside? Is shame just sitting here on your shoulder now as you're sharing this with us? What do you do with that?
Yeah, I have a tendency to give over to moments, which is probably part of what makes me a decent actor, if I can say that. So I haven't actually thought about what I'm saying. And in reflection, I am feeling a little bit vulnerable. This isn't an easy thing to talk about, but what's overweighing me feeling a bit emotional about this is the drive to share, because I know how important it is. And I know that if I was hearing someone like myself open up and talk about it, that it would be significant for me to hear. That's probably why I've subconsciously made a choice to do this, and I'm bringing it up. I definitely didn't come into this thinking that I would be talking about this, but organically it's the way that the conversation's gone, and I honor that. And be part of me moving forward is maybe doing more of this. You think that breaking molds and being a role model to people and being human and opening up about vulnerabilities and not just this, but women going through the ages we're going through and changes and what that means in my industry, God, and the pressures and just all sorts of things that I think people are embarrassed to talk about or shamed to talk about for whatever reasons. Then it becomes real. People think less of us. People judge us. I'll be letting down the armor of veneer of people think Hollie's this way or whatever. At the end of the day, we're all human. And I think it's incredibly brave. And that's why you see people like Celeste Barber, who have had such an an amazing career stemming out of taking ownership of who their authentic self is. And I have mad props for her. And I mean, she's also a lovely human, but seeing what she's done, which some people would be like, oh my God, that's so embarrassed. No, it's brilliant. She's being who she is. She's taking total ownership, kicking all sorts of fear out of everywhere. And she's being someone we can all relate to, because that's real. You know, she's putting up a model of something that is a real representation of someone that I identify as alike. So yeah, I am feeling a little bit in my belly right now, but that's not a bad thing. I think that just means that it's hard to talk about, but those things have weight, and in myself there's a bigger thing at play here. So I might get off the phone and text you guys and be like, oh my God, was that okay? Or I'm going to need the reassurance, which is also the other side of fear and anxiety. But I also know that I can do that. And you guys will be like, you're great and you're fun. And you'll be able to reassure me and give that. And then that makes it easier the next time I might go to open up or to share something, knowing that it's not oversharing. It's actually doing good. Become a new norm for us is to talk about these things a little bit more.
The gift you're giving to us today, Hollie, is a gift of authenticity and transparency. And that's the very thing that we need so much more of. It's until people have the courage, like you have today, to allow that vulnerability to sit there in its uncomfortable state within your stomach and share that really is the essence of us connecting as humanity.
Well, thank you. And that's maybe comes back to me being a storyteller, right? Because having that ability to understand moments and to lift things up out of myself and to bring that to the table is my vessel of how I storytell, I think. And then meeting people and collaborating and all those things are a derivative of that, but it always comes back and up and out through me. And again, that can bring me back to success. Hearing you say that's a definition of success for me, being told, you know, my authentic self was enough, like winning.
Absolutely. And I so hope that the people that listen to this take that as well, that their authentic self is enough.
Yeah.
You know, that's the truth for all of us, for every single human being.
Yeah. And again, that brings me back to that thing that I say all the time, which is be you, because everyone else is taken. And that's a layman's term of saying it, because it's a very effective way of me introducing that concept, because authentic self can be quite deep when we're talking to especially younger people that I work with. Some of them are all about it. Some of them think they understand, but do they really? It might just be a bit of a buzzword they see on Instagram. But I feel when I get to say be you because everyone else is taken, it's a real light bulb moment. And then I've said that to adults and to a lot of people, and people are like, oh, that's great. And you know what? I don't even remember where I got it from. I want to say I made it up, but I know I did.
But Hollie, you have just so beautifully, authentically, by sharing what you've shared, you have done that. You have just shown us how to be you, with all the bits and pieces that we thought, am I really happy that I've shared all that? Thank you so much for actually embodying that, and what a gift to be able to do that and show that. And wrapping up, knowing what you know now and where this journey's taken you and your why, what message would you give your 10-year-old self?
All right. So I've thought about this. First and foremost, never give up. Just never give up on anything, on yourself, on life, on something you care for, on a dream. That would be for just never give up. That's like a big thing. And I did go back and tell myself that in time, because I haven't never given up. But never give up is the thing, would be to believe in yourself. And for me to be able to look in the mirror as my 10-year-old, I think I had incredible parents that were telling me that, which was a gift that they gave me, but almost in a way where I would have loved to have stood in the mirror in front of myself and said those words to myself and owned those words myself, rather than being given them and relying on that. There's a difference. And I learned that as an adult. And I think I'd love to have gotten my 10-year-old self and stood her in front of the mirror and made her say them and made her understand them when looking at herself. And don't be scared to dream big or manifest big, because anything is possible. And that, it sounds like a little cliche, but it's not. Like, anything is possible. You just have to think, want, desire, and then that's your purpose. And and even if you don't get to that point there, you might find something that's even more brilliant, but you would never have known that if you weren't on the track of the first thing. So dream big.
They're beautiful messages for your younger self. Thank you. What would be your greatest gift this experience or knowledge has given you?
I come back to the idea of now properly understand a better definition for me of what success is. There was probably a lot of me before this all happened that would be looking at others, especially as a career and as an actor, and I'd be looking at what success was and striving toward a thing that I actually didn't want. If I'd gotten all of that, I actually don't think it would have made me happy. And I don't think that that was what my true success looked like. And I'm pushing into this space of entrepreneurship where I'm making choices and dreaming things up and meeting people and getting to make these discoveries and work and collaborate and all of the things. I'm actually doing what I believe my success is and being successful by doing it. So it's the greatest lesson, because if I was still back on the path of, I don't know, wanting my 10 feature film deal with Spielberg, that's I don't know whether I would have done my 10th film and felt as joyous or as happy or as complete as I do now. Yeah, I probably wouldn't be eating as many ramen noodles. But that's fine. They're yummy. So pulling out for a sponsor.
Oh, Hollie, it has been so insightful, inspiring, joyous, to use your word, to talk to you today. Thank you so much. Is there any other tips that you wanted to share with us before we wrap up?
Being you and finding the joy in being you, finding the joy in the small and big moments, and purpose. I do come down to purpose. I think purpose is really important, and it's a really amazing way that can drive really fantastic things in our lives.
Thank you so much, Hollie. It's been absolute gift and pleasure to spend time with you today.
It's been amazing.
Okay, that's our episode for today of What's Fear Got to Do with It. Thanks so much for your company. We hope you found it insightful and it left you with some helpful tips from our guests and some great points for you to reflect on. Don't forget to subscribe to us on Substack or follow us on your favourite platform. Leave a review. We'd love to know your thoughts. Maybe you'd like to be a guest, or you know someone who you would like to hear their story. Reach out to us on Insta at whatsfear_podcast or email us at info@whatsfear.com. All the guests' show notes are below to find their tips. And until next time, from Jo and I, take care, stay curious, and keep the conversation going.